I've got this engine upside down for all my Australian viewers so they can understand what we're looking at. Actually, I'm under a bit of pressure to get this job finished. So I've got the head on. We've already done a video on that. But I just wanted to show you a few things, what we're going to do prior to fitting, and a few little things and issues that I had. First of all, I'm going to just tell you that you can see out there I've taken the studs out. What I do now is I don't even bother putting the studs in. I just put bolts in with a bit of Loctite and a lock washer, and makes the engine in and out far easier. But the big problem I had yesterday was I was doing a smoke test. I got my smoke tester down there, and well, Curtis was here knocking about and showing him how it worked, and we had a few leaks. Now, this is why we do it prior to fitting. One of the leaks was on the manifold. I'll show you that when I flip the engine round. But that was easy. I had a bit of a gasket caught. That was easy rectified. But the other leak was on the oil pan. I've got this black silicone-y gooey type stuff on now. But what was happening was it was leaking just a little hair out of here. Now, smoke apparently is 1 micrometer in diameter, smoke molecule. A human hair, is 60 micrometers. So you can see how small the smoke can get through, a little tiny hole. Now what it was, that's why I've got this stuff here. I did the Loctite, this silicone, around the seal as I usually do. And the room temperature was about 18-19 degrees, and I left it for 12 hours and it was leaking, and I couldn't understand why. Anyway, I had to redo the gasket again, or reseal it again, and when I took it off it hadn't dried. It was just still sort of gummy. So I think what had happened was, well, whether it's a bad batch, I don't know what it is, but it was bloody awful stuff. I can't understand why it didn't go off, because usually with this stuff here you have to put a chisel under and pull them off, and it just wouldn't have it. So I reverted back to the high-low sill and put it on with high-low sill, and that's made a lot better job. So yeah, that's why we do pressure testing of engines prior to fitting, just to find out if there's any leaks that we've missed, because it is easy to do. One other thing while I've got this upside down, the oil pan on this was pushed in. It had been either dropped on the floor at some point, or it's had a jack put underneath. You shouldn't jack engines up just on the oil pan. They're thin, listen. But the problem is, the oil pickup strainer was almost touching the bottom of the pan. Now I'm just wondering, just out loud, because the bearing went in this engine, could it get sufficient oil through it? Maybe, maybe not. Why didn't they all go? Well, it only takes one to go first, and maybe if it had cheap bearings in, that was the reason why. Who knows? Anyway, more things to ponder over. As you can see also here, I've made this funky pipe to connect the oil cooler together. Now, there's several reasons for this. Firstly, it stops dirt getting into the orifices of this oil filter housing. Secondly, we need to join these two pipes up together, or block them off at least, to do a smoke test, because otherwise smoke will come out of everywhere. And thirdly, this allows me now to run the engine up with the timing belt without the timing cover on, so I can see where that belt's running. And you can see I've been turning it over and over and over, and it's still exactly where it was, and that's a good thing. Well, my wire's got a bit trapped up there. So let me put the camera down a minute, we'll turn the engine over and we'll look at the other side. When you're testing the crankcases to make sure nothing's going to leak, or the rocker covers or anything, or the oil cap, make sure they're not going to leak, one of the problems you have with smoke testing is that the smoke can actually get through the piston rings. That's how fine it is. and eventually it will come out of the manifolds, and the manifolds are not particularly well cast and it's very difficult to plug up. So I made this plate because I do a lot of them. But the other day I was looking for these plastic plugs and I couldn't find them anywhere, except I did a bit of research and I found out actually what they were called, capugs or something like that. I'll do a link below in the description where I got them from. But I got all this lot here and another set down underneath. Hang on a minute. So this little lot, from very tiny ones to about 35mm, all that lot was $30, which was pretty cheap. Now I got these principally for sandblasting, so I can plug up the injector pumps and holes and stuff like that prior to bead blasting. But they're very handy, so you could actually use those type of plugs directly in the head itself to stop any smoke getting out. Now I've set this up now for smoke testing. I always do it by the dipstick tube, but it is interesting, and what we'll do is I'll put the camera on the stand and we'll show you how we do it. Is there anything else to tell you while we're here? Not really. I've got to trim these pipes back a little bit. They get a bit shabby. The pipes have gone up to there, and I always cut them really long so that if they ever do leak in the bush, you can always cut them down and push them back again. So we've got a few more jobs to do, a few little jobs, but then we can pop this engine back in. So I've got the smoke tester hooked up to the dipstick tube. Just wanted to show you that. We'll zoom in a bit. What we're looking for is the manometer. Now I know it's at a bit of an angle, but it should still work. Oops. So now what it's doing is it's filling the crankcases full of smoke and fumes, whatever it does, and you can see it dropping rapidly. And what we want it to do is stop. Getting there. Getting there. It's pretty good. If we look at the engine itself, you can see there's no sort of prominent leaks. There could be a little tiny leakette coming out of these plastic bones, but I'm not really bothered about that. And just to show you that it is working, we take the cover off, we let it bubble up a bit, because it is smoking. I want to see some smoke come out the cover. There it goes. It is difficult to see. Maybe you can't even see that. Oh yes, you should. Yeah. So I'm going to put the cap on. And see what happens. It should go down. Also, another place that could be a potential leaky type problem, and it's not shooting off 100,000%, is that the bolts for the crankshaft are just pushed in the holes. Now the crankshaft's open to the bolts are through bolts that go all the way through the other side, and there's no sealer on them. So there could be a tiny wee pet around there. The only way to find it like really closely is to go around soapy water. Well, naturally I don't want to be putting soapy water and making everything rusty, but that's pretty darn good, you know, that's pretty good. but we can see there's no leaks coming out of the rocker box. We're quite happy with that. There, it's just about shut off. It's just there. It's stopped. That's it. So that's it. So we're quite happy with that. You know, it's always worthwhile testing a motor before you actually put it in, because there's nothing worse putting it in and finding out, oh, I forgot to put a plug in the back, or there's a bolt loose or something like that, so you've got to take it all out again. So we're ready to fit this now, or me. I'm going to take it off the stand now and fit the flywheel housing and the flywheel and clutch and stuff like this, and then we should be ready to put it in. Oh, misses. But yeah, I've got all this lot to build up. Yeah, I'm going to do as much as I can on the engine before we put it in. So next thing we'll see is on the hoist and getting it lifted in. But first of all, we're going to do the clutch arm. I might as well do in addition to that while I'm here. Alright, so stick around.